Here's a look at some 90s vinyl that I have, late 80s, 90s, early 2000s, back when vinyl was supposed to be dead. So this, don't ignore that. This was a plastic sleeve I got with a picture sleeve copy of the Rolling Stones' Emotional Rescue. Obviously this is not that. This is the SMOKIN MOJO Filters, which is members of the band Oasis plus Paul McCartney doing Come Together, which, as you know, is a Beatles song. Paul McCartney was in the Beatles. You shouldn't have to look any of this up. And I think there's a photo of him on here buried somewhere. Maybe that's what Paul looked like in about 1965. Oh, and there he is in 1995 when this was made. This, I believe, was some sort of benefit disc, and they got together, this one-time supergroup, to do this. And I probably have played this once. Oh no, there goes the sleeve. Well, you can look at the label for a second while I retrieve the sleeve. And as you can see, made in England. Ignore that, that's from the sleeve. And it doesn't say. Well, maybe this wasn't a benefit. But anyhow, oh, they even got the Mojo fill. I never noticed that, because this has been in front of this, inside of here, covered for the last 20-some years. Well, and that looks just like the Beatles logo. So this, it's a good, oh, so I'm pretty sure this was some sort of benefit, but I can't remember what now. And I got this at a record show. I'd heard on the radio there was a record show back then. And they said, they must have said where it was, and I just started driving in that direction. I had no idea where I was going. I got near to the expressway that would have taken me there, and I think I passed it, and then I stopped somewhere and asked directions, where is this? They said, oh, try going here and here. So I just kept driving until I saw another expressway. I took that, and then I ended up really far from where I was, backtracked. I don't know how, but I found this place. And it was kind of sad. It was the last record show I went to, and it was just before the internet. This is 95, 96, just before the internet started becoming a thing for commerce. And there was all these guys with their bins full of stuff, and nobody was buying anything. Maybe it was late in the day, but also it just wasn't happening then for whatever reason. I found this at one of the tables for a reasonable price, and I somehow knew maybe there was because Paul's name is on it. So the Gallagher and Paul Weller from the Jam. And so I bought it. And it's been sitting in my house ever since. In '93, they put out a box set of SYD Barrett's stuff, because after he left Pink Floyd, even with Pink Floyd, he made Piper at the Gates of Dawn, contributed a little to Saucer Full of Secrets, and then maybe 3-4 singles he contributed, and that was it for him. And then he made 2 albums, some with help from his Pink Floyd brethren, and then pretty much disappeared. And in '88, they came out with a collection called Opal of outtakes. And then in '93, they bundled that together with his 2 albums, which was the Madcap Laughs and Barrett, and that became the Crazy Diamond box set, and there's some bonus cuts on there. And here's 4, this is an EP. Oh, I thought it was a single. It's an EP, 4 tunes from that. There was some BBC stuff on there, so pretty much everything he ever committed to tape was on that set, except Have You Got It Yet and Vegetable Man. Those are 2 Pink Floyd era songs he recorded with Pink Floyd that I don't think have ever been released. They might be on this new box set that just came out here in late 2016, but I haven't checked. So this, and as you can see, it's pink vinyl. Very nice, and with this green sleeve, I don't know why I have a green sleeve. Very festive. But I got this, I believe at Quonset Hut, which was a chain in Northeast Ohio of stores that sold vinyl still in the 90s. This green sleeve is not original to that. I don't know why I put this with here. I may have gotten this green sleeve with an Apple Records copy of number 1801, the very first single on Apple Records, which is Thingamabob by the Black Dyke Mills Band and Yellow Submarine. So, nevertheless, that's what this is. And Capitol was still making vinyl in '93. And my favorite song on any of his albums is Baby Lemonade, which fortunately is on here. And you'll see the name Malcolm Jones, who was a staff person at EMI at Abbey Road, and then David Gilmour, Roger Waters from Pink Floyd, Richard Wright, they all helped out, I think, on his second of 2 solo albums. This, by the way, that's probably driving you nuts is Jethro Tull, Thick as a Brick. My wife likes this album inexplicably. I don't hate it. It's a good album, but that's on here. We'll put this on again later. This is not from the 90s. Moving on. Smashing Pumpkins. This is from the Sub Pop Singles Club, if memory serves. And it's produced by Butch Vig and Billy Corgan. And this is Tristessa? I don't know. I've never listened to this, actually. And it's got the pink vinyl. And I think I got this at a store called Record Revolution, which used to take up 3 storefronts in a neighborhood called Coventry in Cleveland, sort of the hip area. It's near Case Western Reserve University. It's on the east side. And back then it took up 3 storefronts, top and bottom, and the basement. This would have been 97, I probably got this, and this is from 1990. Quite valuable. And I got this there. I also got a copy of an album by the Spinanes. I think that's how you say it. Their only album was on Sub Pop, sealed for $4, I think, and I've still got that. Years later, I went back to Record Revolution. I went in, it was mostly smokeless tobacco and piercings and crazy stuff, and then a small selection of newer, like reissue vinyl. Very disappointing. I didn't realize they still had the basement. So the next time I went back, I went down the steps, boom, huge selection of used vinyl, a lot of it for under $1, and I've gotten some great stuff in there. Let's see, more 90s vinyl. Oh, Cannonball by the Breeders, who are also from Ohio, Kim and Kelly Deal. The Sisters. I loved this video. I loved when the State used this song in that sketch where the one fellow's trying to buy pants, Michael Ian Black. There's another sketch they do, unrelated, maybe the same episode, though, because I remember it so well, where it's supposed to be crime time after prime time. That was what was on CBS late night in the late 80s, early 90s, after Pat Sajak's late night show failed, but before David Letterman started. They had all these sexy crime shows like Silk Stockings, or there's one from Canada, I think, called Night Heat, City Heat, which sometimes had Tony Rosato in it from Second City and from SNL. And they didn't use this song in it, but I remember the line that I still use to this day. Everything, they're showing how every scene in those shows, they're parodying that every scene in those leads to sex. And there's one section where Ken Marino is talking to, is it Joseph McCartney? Oh my gosh, I can't remember. The guy, he's in everything. Reno 911. Anyhow, he's playing a judge, and he says to Ken Marino, "Are you aware of your rights?" And Ken Marino says, "I'm aware of my pants." I love that. Anyhow, this I got on eBay in a lot of stuff. I wanted this particular record for my jukebox because I really liked the song Cannonball. And this was one of those songs that at the time when it came out, 92, 93, maybe 94, 93, it was so popular on MTV, and with my friends, I just assumed it was a big hit. I didn't really look at the charts then. Years later, I looked it up, and this was in the Hot 100. It probably got to number 70 or something like that. So chart action, not so great, but popularity, huge. Another record like that is the first album by the band, Music from Big Pink. That only got to number 30 on the charts, but as people tell it to me, it was wildly popular. Everyone knew about it. So that's the Breeders channeling the band via record sales in some fashion. Let me see, I've got a few others here. This, my wife will love this part. Beach Boys, Sub Pop, rarities from the Pet Sounds box set, outtakes, including this is the first of anybody ever heard anything stereo from Pet Sounds. And the jacket for this is weird. It's not an actual jacket. Maybe they're all like this. It's the sides of it aren't sealed up, so it's just sort of a piece of paper, piece of cardboard folded. I don't know if you can see that. And there's the record, which I played a few times. This, and the back is very cool. This I got at the Sub Pop store, the original one, in Seattle, summer of 1996. We were visiting. We went to the Boeing factory. We went somewhere where there's a bunch of trees. I don't know. I remember we were so bored in the car driving. My dad said, "Have you got any tapes?" My Walkman. "You got any tapes to listen to?" So I gave him one, and it had "Bye Bye Love" by Ray Charles, his version, "Isolation" by John Lennon, and "Miracles" by Jefferson Starship. And I'm sure as my parents listen to the tape, they're like, "What is wrong? What's happening with our son? We need to keep an eye on him." I feel like my parents were about to reach back and say, "You can talk to us whenever you want." Anyhow, that's I like the back here, this motif of Pet Sounds. The interesting thing about this is I bought it, and I remember I went through the whole store, and I was a teenager, and I'm sure the guy running the store thought, "Oh, he's going to pick Nirvana or something relatively hip." The only album I come out of the Beach Boys, Pet Sounds. I don't know. But I remember when I came outside, there was a Volkswagen Beetle, an old one, because this is in the 90s. I didn't have new ones yet, parked, and the guy either hadn't put it in first or hadn't put the brake up. He had turned the wheels in the proper direction towards the curb because he was facing downhill. And I remember it let fly, and it traveled about 4 feet and hit the car in front of it that was parked. No damage I could see because they're pretty lightweight, but that's my memory of coming out of the Sub Pop store. Years later, now, I have a Volkswagen Beetle. How ironic. The other thing about this came out in the summer of 96, if not a little before, and the box set, it was supposed to be a preview taster for the box set. Well, the box set didn't come out for a year or two, or 3, because Mike Love felt that the booklet that came with it didn't give his contributions ample weight. It's been said historically that he was against Pet Sounds and then really against the follow-up, with Van Dyke Parks doing the lyrics instead of Tony Asher. Was it Tony Asher who did the lyrics for this? And he couldn't understand them, and that really destroyed Brian Wilson's confidence and killed the Smile Project. But then Mike Love says, I don't know, wasn't sure what to do. All these conflicting stories. Mike Love is kind of nutty, as everyone knows. He loves Indian people, though, so that's fine with me. But he delayed the set for several years. I remember even reading an article about it in one of the Mix magazine or something, EQ magazine, at the time, saying it was about to come out, and then it didn't come out for several years. And I remember I got it. It was very well done, but I just wasn't into it. I figured, you know what? This is enough for me, plus the actual album. When I got the CD of Pet Sounds, I didn't even bother listening to the 3 bonus tracks. The original CD had Trombone Dixie, which was an instrumental backing track, pretty interesting. It had Hang On to Your Ego, which they redid the words because it was a little too close to home, as I know there's an answer on the finished album. And there was one more. I think there was outtakes from the dogs at the end barking. Banana and Louie, Brian Wilson's dogs. I never even bothered with those. That, by the way, Pet Sounds, I bought because I read an article, everyone was saying, it's great, it's great, it's great. So I jumped on my bike because I couldn't drive at the time and rode my bike to this record shop called Spinners. Not Spinmore, the infamous Spinmore I've talked about, but Spinners. The guy who ran it always looked to me like Irish Santa Claus. And I got Pet Sounds there. And I remember I rode my bike to McDonald's and I looked at the book while I ate, careful not to get it greasy. And then I liked Pet Sounds. But that's what happened with this. So for many years, this was the only way to hear any of this stuff, and we never knew if it would come out. The other thing about Spinners, one day I was riding my bike with the girl I was going out with in high school, and we popped our heads in there. She wasn't much into music, but I was, and they didn't have vinyl in there hardly ever, except they had a David Bowie Sound and Vision box set, the vinyl version, which I should have bought. I didn't. But then, anyway, this was a different day, and my girlfriend and I were poking around, and underneath one of the bins had a big stack of albums, and it was all 70s, mid-70s rock. Aerosmith, Boston, maybe some Journey, I don't know. Kansas, Yes, Styx, Foreigner, all these groups, Asia, REO Speedwagon. I maintain these are all the same group, and they just masqueraded, except for Aerosmith. But all these other groups I maintain are the same. So they had all those albums from all these groups. And I said something to the guy, Irish Santa Claus wasn't there, some other worker. He's like, hey, just take them. So somehow we got on my bike and rode all the way home with these things. And I gave most of them to my brother, because he was more into that. Fog Hat, all that stuff. This, Beck, that's the B-side. Here's the A-side. You all know this. Another one of those songs, like Cannonball, that we assumed was a huge #1 hit, but was just more popular and iconic than actually on the charts. Because back then on the charts was Whitney Houston. This song, Loser, this was Beck's first big song. And this disc, I didn't get back then. I got this around 2011 at a record store near Kent State University that was sort of in this house. It was very weird. The guy was nice. They had good prices, good selection. And somehow he had a ton of 90s 45s, mostly country, because those were still popular on vinyl, 45s in the 90s. But he had this. I think it was a quarter. It's in great shape, and it's a good song. This, you didn't know, maybe you've tried to forget, Bob Dylan did a Christmas album in, 2012? It'll say on here. And he released this old-timey looking 45 from it in 2009. There it is. 'Twas the Night Before Christmas and Must Be Santa. And this was $6. And I remember I saw it at the store and thought, do I want this? Do I need this? I don't need this. So I didn't get it. And I left, and I looked it up online and realized it was really valuable. So I rushed back. They had 2 copies, and they only had 1 left. This is the next day. So I grabbed it. And I remember at the time I was thinking, this was in Burbank, California, right near an Indian restaurant. I was going to eat at the Indian restaurant, but then I ran out of time both days. And I remember at the time I was about to move there. This is also near the IKEA, if you know where the Burbank IKEA was. I think they've moved. And so I struck up a conversation with the shopkeep, as they call them, thinking this will be my new record store. Well, I've never been back, sadly. It was a huge place, very nice. And that's where I got that. I've never opened it. That'll be... my grandkids can worry about all this junk. I don't know. I don't know. You don't know. You can't. Paula Abdul, Forever Your Girl. She actually looks better looking now, I think. Not saying she's not bad, nice looking now, or then, or whatever, but fine. I looked at the track list, and this was $1. This was in the dollar bin a few years ago, because people figured vinyl's dead, and vinyl from the late 80s, dance stuff, is really dead. This was her first album, I believe. First, at least, successful album for sure. And looking through the track listing, so many of these songs were huge hits. I was surprised. This was a monster, this album. Probably one of the biggest sellers of the year. And like many late 80s albums, I don't think it was available except from record clubs. BMG, in this case. And I don't think that this would have been on there. Because see how it's a different font? This wouldn't have been on there if it wasn't a record club issue. So I got that. I actually have a 12-inch single of Opposites Attract, because it's got the Cool Cat, as he's called, on the front cover, a cartoon of him. And I found that for 10 cents at Reckless Records in Chicago, the one up in Boys Town. That one. I have the 12-inch single of that. Kind of scratched, but still plays well. It's got more of the marks of taking it in and out of the jacket. That one. And again, with Family Guy, I always enjoyed the Family Guy takeoff on that, which you should look up if you haven't seen. This is the last one. New Jack City. When this movie came out, I was little, and we were told, do not go near, do not even look at a theater that's playing this, or you'll be murdered. All right, whatever. I didn't know this song was in there. I knew of this song. I didn't know it was in that movie. I still haven't seen the movie, which is obviously quite good, supposed to be. And this was clearly belonged to a traveling DJ. We had this fella that used to come to our school dances. He had 2 giant speakers with the thick fur on them and 2 turntables, and I think he had a CD player, mixer, of course, and a big setup, tons of discs, and would be playing the newest songs. This is in the 90s, which is weird that he was still using vinyl. I don't recall him playing this, but his name, he's African American, very nice, because he'd be at dances. Every dance I went to for 3-4 years. The name of his company was the Pearl Jam Factory. Now, this predated the band Pearl Jam being popular. I don't know if he changed it afterwards or not, or changed it because of them, because he knew they were up and coming. I don't know. But the Pearl Jam Factory, seeing a DJ with thick, plush, furry disco speakers who's African American playing Whitney Houston and whatnot, did not jive in my mind with the band Pearl Jam, who I knew very little about until after I knew of the Pearl Jam Factory. So that's destroyed my mind. So there's this. I will say, when I got this in the dollar bin, there was a young lady about my age who was also looking through vinyl, the only other one, and we got to talking, and I was helping her find some discs she wanted because she had just gotten a turntable, and so she was asking, well, what have you got? What have you picked out? So I showed her some, and I showed her this one, and as I showed it to her, I realized this seems like I'm flirting, showing her this. If I wanted to flirt, I would have shown her this first, but I wasn't trying to flirt because I'm taken. Just saying. So there's some of my 90s vinyl. I have lots more, which I'll show in a different post, because this one's gone on about twice as long as usual.